Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for biology. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. Now, if you don't already have this installed in your device, I would like you to download the app in order to follow along in this class. Now, ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams. Exams such as the UTME, the post-UTME, WAEC, GCE, IJMB, KCPE, JUPEB, CAUDAL. In the junior sections, we also have the BECE, we have the SSCE, and so much more. Now, you can download the app from www.examguide.com or you visit the Google Play Store to download. Now, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to update yourselves on new videos that will be coming up. Now, if you're ready for this class, let's get started. Today, we're going to be looking at another exciting topic, and that is tissues and supporting systems. Tissues and supporting systems. In this particular topic, we're going to be looking at a whole lot of exciting subtopics. But at the end of this particular topic, you are expected to know some few things. And we call that the specific objective. So you should be able to define a skeleton. Number two, you should be able to give an outline on the types of skeletons we have. Number three, you should also be able to tell us parts of the mammalian skeleton. How is it divided into? And then number four, you should be able to describe the structure and functions of the skull. Number five, describe the structures and functions of what we call the vertebral column, also known as the backbones. And finally, number six, be able to describe the structure and functions of the ribs and the sternum. Functions of the ribs and the sternum. Now, if you're ready, I am. Let's go. Definition of skeleton. Definition of skeleton. Now, most times, some persons define skeleton as a bony framework. Now, I still stand to be corrected, but I will prefer the definition to be a framework. Because if we say a bony framework, it will defeat the purpose of having types of skeleton. Because we have different types of skeleton, and it is not all these types of skeletons that consist of bones. If we say bony framework, it means that the skeleton consists of bones. So, a better definition for a skeleton is a framework of the body. It is a framework of the body. It provides support, shape, and protection to the soft tissues and organs in the body. I repeat, a skeleton is a framework of the body which provides support, shape, and protection to the soft tissues and organs in the body. As you can see, the structure of the skeleton. But this one on the screen is actually a bony framework. Now that brings us to the discussion of types of skeleton. Now basically we have about three types of skeleton. We have what we call the hydrostatic skeleton. Number two, we have what we call exoskeletons. And number three, we have what we call endoskeleton. I repeat, number one, hydrostatic skeleton. Number two, exoskeleton. Number three, endoskeleton. And we will be looking at each type of skeletons and examples of organisms that possess these skeletons. Number one is hydrostatic skeleton. Now, hydrostatic skeleton is found in soft-bodied animals. You can see this type of skeletons in soft-bodied animals. Now, these animals have what we call fluids. They have fluid pressure, which provide them with support and also help to maintain shape and form. Now, examples of organisms that carry out or that possess hydrostatic skeletons include the earthworms. We also have the sea anemone and so many other echinodermata as well as colentrata. Mostly the colentrata and echinodermata and most of the worms, they possess hydrostatic skeleton. As we can see in the screen there, we have organisms with hydrostatic skeletons. A is hydrostatic, I think B to an extent hydrostatic, and so on. So, and also E is also hydrostatic skeletons, but not D and not the other elephant you see there, no. Well, we can also say I is also hydrostatic skeleton. Next is exoskeletons. Now, exo talks about something that is located outside. So this is a type of skeleton found outside, or it can be found on the external part of the body of some animals. It is found outside the body of some animals. Now, these animals, they possess what we call cortical. They possess cortical. And these cortical are made up of also a compound or a substance we call chitin. Now, this chitin provides support, shape, and also protects as well as aid movement in some of these organisms that possess exoskeleton. Now, what are the organisms that possess exoskeleton? Most invertebrates possess exoskeletons. And the type of, or the particular phylum of invertebrates that possess exoskeletons are mostly the arthropods. You see it more in arthropods. Now, examples of organisms that possess it, we have the insects, we have the prawns, we have the crabs, we have the spider, we have the millipede. You can see that all these examples are arthropods. Now, it is very important to note this, that animals that possess exoskeleton, most of them undergo what we call molting. Most of them undergo molting. As you can see on the screen, molting is simply the shedding off of old skin so as to grow and later reproduce new ones. So organisms from time to time shed off old skin in order to grow, and they produce new ones. Now, that process, we call it molting, or you can call it ecdysis. Okay? Next, number 3 type of skeleton is the endoskeleton. Endoskeleton. Now, endoskeleton is a type of skeleton that is found inside the body of some organisms, or for some animals. Inside the body of some animals. Mind you, what we're actually looking at is tissues and supporting systems, mostly in animals. We're not talking about tissues and supporting systems in plants. These are tissues and supporting systems in animals. Next thing to take note of under endoskeleton is that the animals, they possess bones. In terms of hydrostatic skeletons, we said they have fluid pressures. In terms of exoskeletons, we said they have corticals, which contain what, or possesses compounds or substances called chitin. But in terms of endoskeletons, they possess, or they have, bones and cartilages, or their skeletons are made up of bones and cartilages. And it is these bones and cartilages that provide support, shape, provide protection, and also aid movement in these animals. Now, most vertebrates possess endoskeletons, and these vertebrates include mammals, reptiles, aves, pisces, as well as what? Amphibians. They possess endoskeleton. Now, bones. Remember we said that endoskeletons, they possess, or they are made up of bones and cartilages. Let's take a look at things. Let's discuss a little about bones. Now, bones are tissues that consist of what we call living bone cells, protein fibers, and minerals. These are the 3 components of bones. I repeat, bones are made up of living bone cells, they are made up of protein fibers, and they are made up of minerals. The living bone cells can also be called osteocytes, while the protein fibers, they are called collagen. The minerals that makes up bones are calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. calcium phosphate, and calcium carbonate. Then we also have cartilage. Cartilage. Now, cartilage are tough and flexible tissues with great tensile strength. They have great tensile strength. Now, cartilages are made up of living cells, they are made up of protein fibers, and they are made up of carbohydrates. I repeat, cartilages are made up of living cells called chondroblast. They are made up of protein fibers, which are known as collagen, and they are made up of carbohydrates. Now, one of the major functions of cartilage is that they act as what we call a shock absorber. It simply means that they help to cushion the effects of bones moving against each other during movement. When the bones start crushing each other during movement. As you can see on the structure there, we have bones in a joint. When the bones starts moving, okay, to prevent a shock between the bones if they glide against themselves, the cartilage helps to prevent that by absorbing the shock that is supposed to be created when bones glide against themselves during movement. Now, we have different types of cartilages. We have what we call the fibrocartilage. The fibrocartilage is located between small bones in the vertebral column. We're going to be talking about the vertebral column much more later. So another name, like I said, another name for vertebral column is backbones. So there is cartilage, or there are cartilages between small bones, or between the bones that are found in the cartilages. Number two type of cartilage is called the hyaline cartilage. Now, this hyaline cartilage is found in the trachea. Okay, it can also be found in the nose. It can also be found in the bronchus, or the bronchi, inside the part of the respiratory system. And number three type of cartilage is the elastic cartilage. The elastic cartilage. It is found in the pinna of the ear. That is, the external part of your ear is made up of cartilage, and then we also find it in the epiglottis. In the epiglottis. Now, let's take a look at parts of the mammalian skeleton. Parts of the mammalian skeleton. Excuse me. If you look at the mammalian skeleton, as we talked about in the first instance, if you look at the mammalian skeleton is divided into two main parts. Two main parts. The first part is what we call axial skeleton or axial skeleton, and the second part is what we call the appendicular skeleton. Now, we will be looking at the parts that makes up the axial skeleton so you can have a better picture of it, and then we're also going to look at the parts that makes up the appendicular skeleton. Now, the axial skeletons consist of the skull. It consists of the vertebral column, which I told you another name for it is called backbone. It also consists of the ribs, and then it consists of the sternum. Okay? Now, in this class, or for our class today, we are going to concentrate on the axial skeleton. We're looking strictly on the axial skeleton. So we're going to be talking about the skull. We're going to talk about the vertebral column. We're going to talk about the ribs as well as what? The sternum. In subsequent classes, we're going to be looking at the appendicular skeleton. Now, starting with the skull. The skull consists, as you can see on the screen, consists of the cranium, which is known as the brain box. It consists of facial skeletons, and then it consists of the jaws. Three important parts of the skull: the cranium, which is also known as the brain box, which protects the brain. We have the facial facets, which includes the eye sockets, the nasal sockets, the cheek where it is being attached, and so on. And then we have the jaws, which is the upper jaw and the lower jaw, the maxillae and the mandibles. Is that okay? Now, what actually is the functions of the skull? Now, looking at the functions of the skull, I'll just give you just three functions of the skull. Number one, the skull gives the head a particular shape. It gives shape to the head. The skull gives shape to the head. So it means that the shape of the skull determines the shape of the head. Number 2, it protects the brain, mostly the cranium. The cranium provides protection to the brain. Number 3, it bears the teeth, which is for the jaws. It bears the eyes, the nose, and the ears, which is for which is majorly the part of the skull called the facial skeletons. So the facial skeleton bears the eyes, the nose, and the ears, while the jaws bears the teeth. These are 3 important functions of the skull. Now let's move to what we call the vertebral column. Like I told you, another name for vertebral column is the backbone. Now, we want you to understand that there are several bones. There are so much bones found in the vertebral column, bones that are found there. And these bones, each of these bones, they are called vertebrae. They are called vertebrae. Now note that each vertebrae is held one to the other with a strong ligament. There's a strong ligament that helps to hold them together. And that strong ligament is called the intervertebral disc. It's called the intervertebral disc. Now, in man, we have about 33 vertebrae. In man, we have about 33 vertebrae. Now, these vertebrae in man is divided, mostly in mammals, is divided into 5 major groups. 5 major groups. We have the cervical, we have the thoracic, we have the lumbar, we have the sacral, and then we have the caudal, which is also known as the tail. Now, if you look at it, the cervical, the number of vertebrae found, or vertebra found in the cervical is 7. In the thoracic, we have 12. In the lumbar, we have 5. In the sacral, we have 5. And then in the caudal, we have 4 bones, or 4 vertebrae. So that brings a total of 33 vertebrae in man. Now let's take a look at a typical vertebrae. It will help us understand more understand the features of each of these groups of vertebra in the vertebral column. I repeat, we're going to be looking at a typical vertebrae to help us understand the features of each of the groups of vertebra that is found in the vertebral column. Now, there are several things I want you to take note of, several features. Number 1 feature I want you to take note of is the neural spine. The neural spine. Now, the neural spine is the one that is central and is projecting upwards. It is central and projecting upwards. The next one I want you to take note of is the neural canal. You can see it as an opening or a hollow, okay, found at the middle below the neural spine. And number 3 is the transverse process. The transverse process are the side projections of the bones. Side projections, you can see them, side projections. And then we have what we call the centrum, and then the facets. Now let's look at what these ones are. Now, a typical vertebrae should have the following: a neural canal. The function of the neural canal is for the passage of the spinal cord. It is for the passage of the spinal cord. Then we have the neural spine. I told you it is an upward projection of bones, and it is for the attachment of muscles. The neural spine is for the attachment of muscles. We also have number 3, which is called the transverse process. Now, the transverse process, I told you they are side projections, and these side projections provide attachment of muscles and ligaments. Muscles and ligaments. We have the centrum, which is just a solid piece of bone beneath or below the neural canal. And then we have the facets, which helps to connect one bone, one vertebrae to another vertebrae. Now let's start up with the cervical vertebrae. Remember we said that the vertebral column or the backbones, they are divided into 5 major vertebrae. We're going to be starting with the first one, which is called the cervical vertebra. Let's take a look at the cervical vertebra. Now the cervical vertebra is located at the neck region. It's located at the neck region. Now the cervical vertebra has about 7 vertebrae. It consists of 7 vertebrae. The first 2 cervical vertebrae are called atlas. That's the first one. The second one is called the axis. We have the atlas, we have the axis. We're going to be looking at these 2. They have very important function or relation to man. First, atlas. You can see on the screen that is the atlas. Let's take a look at some of the features of the atlas. One is that the atlas has no centrum. You can see there is no solid piece of bone after the vertebral column, beneath the neural spine. Another name for the neural spine is the vertebral foramen. Number 2, it has little or no neural spine. Little or no neural spine, none. Then number 3, it has broad transverse process. And number 4, it has a very large neural canal. These are features of the atlas. Now, one of the major functions of the atlas is that the atlas helps us to actually nod the head. It helps us in the nodding of the head. Then we have the second one, which is the axis. Now, the features of the axis or characteristics of the axis, which is the second vertebrae found in the cervical vertebra, is that it has what we call odontoid process. It is like a knob that is found in the bone, a knob, an outgrowth or a projection like a knob. Now, if you look at it on the screen, it articulates with the atlas. That knob articulates with the atlas. The odontoid process helps the head to turn and twist. It helps in the turning and the twisting of the head. It is based on its articulation with the atlas, which is the first cervical, and helps in the turning of the head. Now, the next feature you see in the axis is that it has small transverse process. If you can look at it there, it has small transverse process. And then also it has a large neural canal. It has a large neural canal. And because we can't see it clearly here, it has what we call a ridge-like neural spine. A ridge-like neural spine. Let's move to the next group of vertebrae found in the vertebral column, and that is the thoracic vertebrae. Thoracic vertebra. Now, the thoracic vertebra is located at the chest region. It is found at the chest region, and it consists of about 12 vertebrae. Now, the features of the thoracic vertebra are just 3. One, we have that the neural spine is in the vertebra. Please note this. The neural spine is projected upwards and backwards, mostly in a thoracic vertebrae or vertebra. The neural spine is projected upwards and backwards. And then number 2, the transverse process are short and articulates with the rib, okay, to form the rib cage. They articulate with the ribs to form the rib cage. And then finally, the neural canal is circular. Now take a look at what it looks like. You can see in the screen that the neural spine is projected upwards and is moving backwards. So that is the thoracic vertebrae. You can see that we have large, broad transverse process and so on. Now let's move to the next one, which is the lumbar vertebra. The lumbar vertebra is located at the upper abdomen, close to the waist. Upper abdomen. Now it consists of 5 vertebrae. The features you can see in a lumbar vertebra is that it has a very thick centrum, and the neural spine is projected upwards. It is stout. And then we also have a long and broad transverse process. the transverse process in a lumbar is long and broad. And that is one of the key ways to identify a lumbar vertebra. You can see that on the screen. The transverse process are long and broad. You can also see a very thick centrum there. Next is number 4, which is sacral vertebra, the sacral vertebra. Now, the sacral vertebra is also located at the lower abdomen. It's located at the lower abdomen. The lumbar is at the upper abdomen. The sacral vertebra consists of five vertebrae. Now, these are some of the features of the sacral vertebra. The sacral vertebra has a small neural canal, and the sacral vertebra, the transverse process articulates with the ilium. We're going to be discussing that much later when we start talking about the appendicular skeleton. So it articulates with the ilium in the pelvic girdle. And then number 3, the bones fuse to form a solid mass of bones. Okay? So we have that as the sacral. As we can see here, you can see that the neural canal in the sacral, they are not that pronounced. And if you look at after the sacral, we have what we call the coccyx, which is the tailbone. That tailbone talks about the caudal vertebrae. That brings us to the caudal vertebrae. The caudal vertebrae is located at the tail region. The tail region. Now, in man, it consists of 4 vertebrae, or 4 vertebra. Now, what are the features of caudal vertebra? Number 1, it has no neural spine. Number 2, it has no transverse process. And number 3, it has no neural canal. Absence of neural spine, absence of transverse process, and also absence of neural canal. And then, finally, for now, we're going to be looking at ribs and sternum. The ribs and the sternum are also part of the axial skeleton. Now, the ribs are long semicircular rods, okay? They are semicircular, connecting the thoracic vertebrae, which is at the back, to the sternum. Now, the sternum is your breastbone, found in front here, the breastbone. Now, a typical rib consists of a head, a neck, and a shaft. Now, the bony cage formed by the ribs protects the lungs. The bony cage formed by the ribs protects the lungs and heart, and also it assists in breathing. These are some of the functions of the ribs. The ribs helps to protect, it forms a cage which helps to protect the lungs and also protect the heart, and it also aids during breathing. Okay? Now, in humans, there are 12 pairs of ribs. 12 pairs of ribs. The first 7 pairs of ribs are connected directly to the sternum, and they are referred to as the true ribs. The first 7 connected directly to the sternum are referred to as true ribs. Now, the next 5 pairs of ribs are not connected directly to the sternum, so they are referred to as false ribs. False ribs. Now, if you take a look at the 11th and the 12th ribs, you will discover that they are not connected at all to the sternum. They are not connected at all to the sternum. Those 11th and 12th ribs are referred to as floating ribs. Floating ribs. You can see it on the screen. You see 11th and 12th, they are not connected at all to any part of the ribs. They are referred to as what? Floating ribs. Okay? And then, if you have gotten all this we have spoken, in our next class, we will be talking more on appendicular skeleton. But so far, let's take a look at some few questions to help us understand this better. Let's look at question 1. A characteristic feature of a cervical vertebra is the presence of what? A characteristic feature of a cervical vertebra, or all cervical vertebrae, is the presence of what? A, is the presence of odontoid process. Does all cervical vertebrae possess odontoid process? Wrong. No. Number 2, is it 2 neural canal? No. Number 3, or option C rather, is it long backward pointed neurospine? No. That was what we talked about in thoracic vertebrae. But the correct answer is option D, which is the vertebratal canal. Another name for vertebratal canal is the neural canal. So the neural canal is one of the characteristic features that is found in all cervical vertebrae or vertebra. So let's look at question 2. Which of the following organisms possesses a hydrostatic skeleton? A, goat. No, goats possess endoskeletons. They are mammals. Option C says cockroach. Cockroach is an insect and it is an arthropod. And I told you that all arthropods, they possess exoskeletons. So that is also wrong. Option D says fish. Fish is a vertebrate and it possesses endoskeleton. The correct answer to this, or the correct option, is C, anemone. Sea anemone. They are soft-bodied organisms. So they possess hydrostatic skeleton. All right? So let's look at question 2. Which of the following organisms possess a hydrostatic skeleton? Option A, goat. Goat is not the correct option because goat possesses endoskeleton. Option C, cockroach. Cockroach is an insect. It possesses exoskeleton. Option D, fish. Fish is also a vertebrate. And I told you that all vertebrates possess endoskeletons. The correct option is B, which is sea anemone. Now, finally, question 3. Question 3, the first cervical vertebra in, please take note, it is not chest region, but neck region. The first cervical vertebra in the neck region of a mammal is, option A is atlas, option B is axis, option C is sacral, option D is tail. Now, sacral is located at the lower abdomen, is not at the neck region. And then option D is caudal, which is at the tail region, which is not the same as the question demands, neck region. Option B is axis. Yes, it is located at the neck region, but option B is the second cervical vertebra. So the correct option or answer to this is A, which is atlas. Atlas is the first cervical vertebra in the neck region and not the chest region. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using your ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn particular topics of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and even practice mode. It also has other features that makes learning very fun. Now, it is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to your loved ones and friends that will benefit from it. Bye for now.